I'm Tonya McGrath, executive producer and host of the PowerPLAY Show. As we wind down our celebration of women for National Women's Month, the PowerPLAY will be airing all week wonderful stories of women as we conclude our series, Empowering Women. Be sure to join us each night this week, that's Monday through Friday of this week, as I introduce you to more amazing women who are excelling in their fields and making a significant contribution to all of our lives. That's Empowering Women on the PowerPLAY Show.
From the studios at Hull Bay Productions, this is the PowerPLAY.
Welcome to our special series, Empowering Women on the PowerPLAY Show. I'm your host, Tonya McGrath. My guest has made her mark in helping to understand the world's most deadly infectious diseases. Adrianne Gladden-Young is a senior research associate in Pardis Sabeti's lab at the Broad Institute and Harvard University, where she conducts genomic studies of the viruses responsible for some of the world's most severe and deadly infectious disease outbreaks. She is currently leading benchwork efforts to use COVID genomic epidemiology, I had to learn how to say that, as a tool to understand the spread of COVID-19 during the pandemic. And she uses her knowledge and expertise to ensure lab safety through her role as a representative of the Broad Environmental Health and Safety Group. For the past 15 years, Adrianne has conducted lab research to study viruses including HIV, Lassa, Ebola, Zika, rabies, and Hepatitis A in response to global public health crises. Adrianne has spent time working with a biotech company to evaluate a pathogen detection system prototype designed to identify biological threats found in the air and in different sample types. And as a former member of the Massachusetts General Hospital Hazardous Materials Response Team, Adrianne is formally trained in hospital-based response to hazardous biological and chemical mass casualty events. And if that's not enough, Adrianne has trained and mentored many students and scientists. She is a devoted wife and a mother of two beautiful children. And it is my pleasure to welcome Adrianne Gladden-Young to the PowerPLAY. Adrianne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That was a mouthful. But, needless to say, incredibly impressive. And I'm just so excited that you are here on the show today and we can talk about some of your work. But first, just give our audience a little bit about who you are when you're not doing all these amazing things.
I am a native of Springfield, Massachusetts, home of the Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm a mom, so a new homeschool teacher during the pandemic. I enjoy spending time with my family and just relaxing. Yeah.
So on top of all of this, you're homeschooling your daughters.
During the pandemic, yeah, we've been doing some homeschooling.
So, and I know that this pandemic has hit people kind of differently. What are the things that you miss the most?
Being with family and friends, in the same space with family and friends. We've kind of been isolated for the past year. And so I definitely miss, just being around family and friends and seeing them and, laughing with them and hugging them.
Yeah. With holidays and everything that have come and gone. I totally get that. I want to talk about when you first, as a young woman, what made you decide that you wanted to go into a field like this?
I was 6 years old when my neighbor, my best friend's uncle died from complications due to AIDS. And I remember my parents telling me, he was like, really playful. He always used to play with the neighborhood kids, and I was his favorite because we had the same birthday. And I remember the day my parents told me that he died, and they were trying to explain to me what happened. And they mentioned AIDS, and I'm like, well, what's AIDS? And I just remember my dad telling me that he didn't know much about it, but he was sure that I could find a cure for it.
Wow.
Yeah, so he convinced me when I was 6 years old that I would find a cure for AIDS. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so you're 6 years old, and this humongous loss happens in your life, which obviously had a complete impact on the field that you decided to go into. What type of courses and education did you start to kind of veer towards in terms of, getting to this particular field?
Yeah, I wanted to be a doctor, and actually didn't know how science played a part in it until I got to high school, and I took a human biology course and a microbiology course. And that's when I made the connection, like, oh, if I want to study or if I want to help in the area of infectious diseases, I need to study, microbiology and, human biology. And so that led me to pursue an undergraduate degree in biology, and I moved on from there.
It sounds as though, as part of your work, are you exposed to a lot of these viruses? Like, how does that part work? How do you get to, research and take apart these viruses and kind of find out how they work and why they're killing people?
So yes, I work with patient clinical samples. So people who are, positive for, certain infectious diseases, I will get their clinical samples. And so yes, I work with these viruses all the time. Of course, with protection, personal protection. But yeah, I work with these viruses. And the lab that I work in, we study the virus's genetic material, the genomes, the genetic material of the viruses, to understand how the virus works, how it replicates, how it spreads. Yeah.
So we all know that STEM, the science, technology, and engineering and math, as a pathway to some of these important fields in science and technology, but it still seems to be a very male-dominated pathway. Talk a bit about your experience in, kind of growing in this field, and then the importance of you mentoring other young girls of color to go into some of these STEM fields.
It absolutely is a male-dominated field, but I've been very fortunate to be able to work with some females who are leaders in the field too. As a matter of fact, the lab that I work in now, the principal investigator is a female, and she's a rock star. So she seeing her, just be a boss in the field, really it has been really inspirational for me. But that's not to say that, we obviously we don't experience certain things as females in the field. I remember being told by a male who was a senior. He wasn't my boss, but he was definitely senior to me, telling me that I thought I knew too much. And in a meeting at work, and he told me I thought that I knew too much, and it was funny because I knew that he would never say that to a male,
right?
And so it's this kind of idea that we sometimes, not all the time, because actually my mentor is a male, but this idea that somehow we're, like I was stepping out of my place.
Yeah, you were out of line.
Yeah. I've definitely experienced that before. But I think it's important to just continue to, strive to to be the best that we can be in this field, so that, the girl, like you said, I have two young daughters, and other, young girls can look at us and say, hey, we can be this too, because we can see it, we can be it. I think it's important to just, tell young girls, don't worry about what other people say or think. Just like do whatever you're passionate about, just pursue it and do it.
And as a woman of color, you mentioned that one instance with that person, but did you encounter other challenges trying to excel in your particular field?
I have a lot. It's been challenging, but I credit my mentor, because he he pulled me aside one day, I remember, and he said, I'm going to teach you everything that I know, but you also have to work hard and learn. And he kind of he told me without explicitly telling me that I had to work harder than everyone else. I had to be better than everyone else.
The black tax.
Sorry?
The black tax.
That's pretty much what he was telling me. Yeah. And he's like, like, don't ever stop learning. Find some science that you're interested in, learn about it, read about it every single day during your lunchtime. Like, don't take a break, don't stop learning, just keep learning. And that helped me, because there were times where, I felt like I couldn't go to others to ask them for help or to ask them to teach me certain things. But he, because of the way that he taught me and trained me and mentored me, I was able to just, that's okay. You don't want to teach me? Fine. I'll learn it on my own, And so I never, I feel like I was never really held back, because, I had an amazing mentor who told me, just never stop learning, just keep moving forward. And that will help you get to where you want to be.
That's so important. And I hope that people who are listening understand that. I'm 52 and I'm still learning. I'm still learning new technologies about how to do the work that I do, because, technology changes all the time. And so I totally agree with that. And I think that's great advice. You have been on the front line of some of the world's most infectious outbreaks, but COVID seemed to come out of nowhere. Maybe not for you, but for the rest of us, we're like, wait, COVID, what? When did you first learn about this outbreak? And did you know that it was going to be this serious? Did you have any idea back then that, people are going to die?
So, no. Well, so it didn't come out of nowhere. I wasn't as aware of, I wasn't really anticipating a pandemic, but there had been ongoing research about SARS-like coronaviruses circulating for a while, and I had just I had read a paper. I think it was published in maybe October or November of 2019, so just before we had started hearing about these outbreaks abroad, and so some people knew about, knew that there was a possibility that, there was going to be some kind of epidemic or pandemic with this SARS-like coronaviruses. But we in our lab, since we kind of follow these outbreaks anyways, because this is our work. We respond to these outbreaks. We learned, I think, in late December 2019. And we were expecting, or at least I was expecting, to kind of help from afar. We thought that the outbreak would just remain contained and on a different continent. And then in January, when I heard about the first case in Massachusetts, I remember telling my husband, stop writing the tea. do not
Wow.
write the T.
Wow.
Because I immediately thought like, oh my goodness, this is probably gonna spread, very easily. And I remember telling some family members they were going to a church service. I'm like, don't go, because that's gonna be like a super spreading event. If one person is infected, it can easily spread. And sure enough, things started happening that way. But even then, I'm saying all of this, but I still never thought that it would be like this. And then we're, more than a year later, we're still
in it.
it's still a pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah,
I never anticipated that, but I expected certain things just in responding to other outbreaks. I expected certain things, but never anything like this.
Why do you think that we were so ill prepared for this?
I think that we've always been we've been ill prepared for a while. It's just that we've been very fortunate that the other outbreaks, maybe the viruses or the pathogens didn't spread as easily. But we, or they, and somehow the outbreaks just, they died out on their own. But we haven't had the public health infrastructure like ever to be able to respond to something like this. So it's just that we we're just fortunate to never have experienced anything like this before. But this could have happened, and was it 2000, whenever the first SARS outbreak was, it could have happened then, if that hadn't died out.
It just, obviously for us, regular folks, we heard about it, I think the beginning of March, I think, is when it really kind of started hitting the news, and people started talking about this virus. There were various names that were going around. And I knew that when we got the call from my son's school, who was in the 7th grade at the time, that we're going to shut down schools. I knew then, I was like, okay, this is insane. And I immediately, I had been traveling for my work and doing different kind of things. I immediately said, okay, I told my husband, I said, all right, I got to set up my entire office to be able to do nothing else but just work from here. And then, I think that what we saw was, people not taking it seriously, politics getting involved, and it just really seemed to have just grown into this out of control in all these different levels, this out of control pandemic that no one really knew how to get a hold on. And now we have a new administration. I think things are working better. The vaccinations are going out there in faster pace or whatever. I got my first vaccination on Monday, so I'm excited. Do you see kind of a turn now? Do you see that, with these different things in place, that we're starting to get on the right track with this virus?
I mean, I think that things are moving in the right direction, but I also worry that we might think that it's over. We might be acting like it's over a little bit too soon. And that might make things worse, So I think it's important to just stay the course. Yes, it's great. We have, these vaccines available to us. Let's get more people vaccinated first. And, just continue on, as we have been for now, waiting till more people are vaccinated, waiting till more people are protected. And then, maybe we can start to return to normal. I don't even know what normal will be now, but maybe we can start to relax, things a little bit. But I think that part might be happening a little bit too soon.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, because I know that there's Texas, for one. The governor had basically eliminated the mask mandate. And, I just kind of thought like, that's insane. I mean, Texas is a big state. I'm pretty sure they're not all vaccinated in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to get people. I don't even know if every state had like a mask mandate in the first place. It's like hard to get states to even, and I understand because, a lot of people were saying, well, they were getting confusing or conflicting messages, from CDC, from a lot of just everywhere, like they were confused. And that's true. We could have done better with the messaging. But I think that for, the public health community, it was important to get information out to the public as soon as possible. So as soon as, we're learning new things about this virus, the way that it's spreading, now we want to get it to the public. But science is always changing. We're always learning new things. And so while, it was, I understand the desire to get information out as quickly as possible. Maybe we could have waited a little bit just so we, we're clear about our, the messages that we were sending. You learned something, like the masks, for example. At first, the public was told that masks were not necessary.
Right.
I think it was like in March or April. They're like, masks are not important. And I was thinking to myself, well, I wear masks every day. And when I work in the lab, I wear masks every day. So I'm pretty sure they're important, but that was just based on the information that was available at the time. It wasn't really clear that whether or not masks were available, and then masks were, but it was hard to win some people over, including some leaders like governors. It was just hard to win people over, and so now they're probably eager to lift these mask mandates that they didn't want to enforce in the first place.
Right.
So
I'm gonna wear mine until 2022. Even when I'm vaccinated, I'm still going to wear mine because I just, the vaccinations are not 100%. And so I think it's still important to be careful, protecting other people, what have you. On top of this challenge with just trying to control and get people safe from this virus, we understand that there have been long-standing systemic health and social inequities in ethnic and racial minority groups, and they are dying at a much larger percentage than their white counterparts. And I know that there's a trust issue. I know that there are health inequities in certain communities, but it just seems to me that something is just wrong here. What do you think about why this is happening?
There was a study, a Boston-based company did a study last year sometime, and they found that Black people, specifically Black people, I wouldn't say people of color, but specifically Black people, were not being referred for testing. If you remember at the beginning, there were the criteria, it was very strict criteria, in order to get a referral for testing. At first, it was only people who traveled. So that, that already creates a bias already. And then, you had to get a doctor's a referral from the doctor. Well, the doctors were not referring Black people. So these are people who were symptomatic. They were not getting referred for testing. So you can imagine if somebody's sick and they go home or go back to their communities, they're spreading it to the whole community, and no one from the community can get tested. So they don't know that they're sick. Or they don't know that they had COVID. They didn't know that they had COVID. And then, there's also this idea that, that we can't get COVID, or it's probably just a cold. We can't get this, we can't. And so that also delayed the time to treatment. And we know that, you know, the longer you wait for treatment, the worse the outcome.
Right. Right.
So it was just like a, you know, they couldn't get tested. Then they didn't, and then some of the hospitals did not have, you know, the treatments that they found to be really effective, the antibodies, the convalescent plasma or remdesivir, all of these things. Some of the hospitals in some of these neighborhoods, communities of color, they did not have the treatment. So people are going and, you know, they're crossing their fingers, hoping that, you know, somebody could do something for them, you know. So it was just, it was like everything was like, you know, like just
stacked up against.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we see the outcome that, you know, the community, people of color are dying more than, you know, their white counterparts.
And, you know, also in the African American community, there's a disproportionate amount of high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma. And we've heard about this for decades because of the conditions in these, you know, very densely populated communities. And, you know, one of the things that I just couldn't understand is that why aren't we focusing on these communities first? Like these communities that are so densely populated, that already have some of the health challenges that were associated with making, if you caught this virus, so much more complicated. I never understood that.
Well, and not even just not focus, that they didn't focus on them. I remember was it like April or early on, the plans were if people had certain comorbidities, they would not receive life-saving treatment if, you know, if the hospitals were at capacity. You know, they had a list. I don't know if you remember, but I remember reading like these plans, and I'm like, wow, you're gonna make a decision not to save certain people's lives, and we're just, you know, people of color disproportionately you know, represented in these groups of people who have these conditions that you know, that would mean that they wouldn't get life-saving treatment. So it's like a cycle, you know, like everything feeds into, you know. Early on, I was like following the research that was happening, and I realized that you know, like communities of color were like left out of research.
Yeah, I read that too. Yeah.
It's just like everything, everything feeds into the next thing.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
and then you have all that, and then you want to turn around and say, okay, we have vaccines, everyone get vaccinated. And for me, it's like, you know, you've already created an idea, and this is not just COVID. This goes back, as you know, decades, you know, not centuries, but many, many decades, that the lack of trust that African American people have in the healthcare system. And then, you know, as you just talked about, the way these communities were treated at the onset of this virus. Now you're saying, okay, trust us, go get this vaccine. And we're seeing that Black folks are not lining up to get these vaccinations.
Yeah, you know, so I've been trying to, you know, help as much as I can, and I've been participating in, you know, discussions about the vaccine, about COVID-19. And what I always say is I try to give people information. You know, if I have information, I will give it to you, because it's not from, I don't want you to place that much trust in me or anyone else, because it can be easily lost. But if I give you information, you are empowered to make your own decisions. And I think that that's the thing. We spent a lot of time talking about distrust and, how can we get people to, trust in the medical establishment. Some people are never going to trust in the medical establishment, and rightfully so. They haven't, why should certain people trust in, they shouldn't. But give them information, empower people, give them information so they know what's going on, they can understand what's going on, and then they can make their own decisions. And that way they don't have to depend on anyone else. They don't have to trust anyone else.
You and Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett are two African American women basically on the front lines of COVID. And I think it means a lot to other women of color seeing you both as an example of the importance of diversity in these scientific fields. And I imagine you must have a huge sense of pride with that. Talk about, how important that is, that, you're working on this incredible information and getting us to understand how these diseases are working and what we can do to try and survive them.
Well, I'm not on Dr. Corbett's level. She's amazing. I mean, but I will say that I entered this field so I could help my community. I've always noticed the disparities, the disparities that are like, even more visible now. They've always been, they've always existed in communities like, the community that I'm from. And so I've always wanted to help. And I feel very fortunate to be in a position to be able to offer some kind of help, even if it's in a small way. I feel very fortunate to be able to help.
You have two beautiful daughters. What type of advice would you give them when they're older, kind of like what your dad did for you, about the importance of STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math, and young African American girls?
I don't want to try to persuade them either way. Whatever, I always tell them, whatever you want to be, I will, try to help you become that. And my 4-year-old, she's always like, well, I want to be a scientist like you. We had gotten this ball from the dollar store, and it was this green ball, and it had like these little spikes on them. And so she's like, what is that on the ball? And I was like, oh, these are spikes on the ball. And she said, oh, is that the coronavirus? Because it has the spike proteins. I said, that's my girl. She's already taken an interest in it. That I didn't push it on her. She's already taken interest in it. So you know what? I bought her a mini lab. We do science experiments. I try to feed whatever it seems like, whatever their interest is. I just try to, feed it, and so if she wants to be a scientist, I'll be happy. And if she wants to be something else, I will also support that.
I wouldn't have made that connection with the ball and the coronavirus. So for 4 years old, that's pretty incredible. So what's next for Adrianne Gladden-Young? What kind of other, I guess, research projects are up next for you?
Yeah, well, actually in a couple months, I'm going back to school. Yeah. I have a master's degree, but, I want to be able to help even more. And so I'm gonna be pursuing a PhD in molecular microbiology at Tufts in a few months. So,
well, we'll have to have you back when that happens. The Power Play ends with asking our guests 3 questions. And first, what would you say to anyone about the importance of listening to the science and not the politics when it comes to COVID-19?
Yeah, it's been very surprising to me how politicized this has become, because the virus does not care who you are, what your political party is, what your race is, what your gender, whatever. If it can infect you, it will. And so that's what the science is trying to, that's what science tries to do. We try to use science to protect people and save lives. So why not listen to the, why not listen to the science? We're just trying to understand the virus. What does politics have to do with it?
I agree. I agree.
That's how I feel about it.
Who is or was your greatest inspiration and why?
I'd have to say my maternal grandmother. My grandfather died when he was 38 years old, I think. And so she raised 8 kids, on her own. I mean, she had, help support from her family, but she raised 8 kids on her own. They've all grown to, be successful, and they have, families, and, it's a loving family. But nothing stopped her, and I found, on this journey, on my own personal journey, there have been a lot of times where I've just wanted to give up, it can be difficult sometimes, but she nothing stopped her. And so that always pushes me to keep going and not let anything stop me either.
Finish this sentence. I am an empowering woman because...
I am an empowering woman because I care, and I give everything that I have. I give everything that I have to try to help and make a difference.
Adrianne Gladden-Young, thank you so much for being a guest on this series, Empowering Women. And I hope you know how very grateful we are for the work that you are doing to help keep us all safe. And I wish you the very best of luck in your future research, in your future academic plans, and just your beautiful family. So good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Remember, you can listen to past episodes of the PowerPLAY Show wherever you subscribe to podcasts, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, and now Pandora Podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Simply search the Hull Bay Productions Media channel. And be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And as always, we air on BroncoIRadio.com each Saturday at 5 p.m. So be sure to tune into the PowerPLAY Show on Thursdays for a new episode wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or on our YouTube channel. Simply search Hull Bay Productions Media Channel, or simply visit thepowerplayshow.com. As I'm doing throughout this series, I want to take a moment to highlight a woman who has inspired me in my life, and we actually mentioned her earlier in the show, and that's Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. Dr. Corbett is a research fellow and a scientific leader who helped to design the Moderna vaccine. It was developed in collaboration with biotech firm Moderna in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the vaccine is now being distributed across the United States and elsewhere. Dr. Corbett is an expert on the front lines of the global race for the COVID vaccine, and someone who will go down in history as one of the key players in developing the science that could end this pandemic. Because of the work of our guest today, Adrianne Gladden-Young, and Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, lives are being saved, and by 2 women who have been empowered to help do so. Until next time, I'm Tonya McGrath. Put on a mask, stay safe, and protect each other.